In the previous episode, we stood in the shadow of modern politics and watched peace fall with the final breath of Yitzhak Rabin, a man who dared to dream beyond war. Today, we go back further to a time of marble and iron, to the ancient kingdom of Macedonia, where a king was struck down not by an army, but by a dagger in the crowd. It was a wedding, a celebration, a moment of triumph. And then it became a funeral. Philip II of Macedon, the architect of Greek unity, the father of Alexander the Great, was assassinated in front of nobles, generals, and gods. But this was not just a murder, it was a coronation, because in the blood of the father rose the fury of the son. Stay with me, because this story is not just about a king, it is about the spark that lit the fire of empire. He was not born to rule, he was born to survive. Philip II of Macedon entered the world in 382 BCE into a kingdom fractured by war, threatened by neighbors and dismissed by the great Greek city-states as barbaric and irrelevant. He was the youngest son of King Amyntas III and spent his youth not in luxury, but in exile as a hostage in Thebes, where he studied under the greatest tacticians of the age, Epaminondas and Pelopidas. There in the heart of Greece, he learned not just how to fight, but how to think, how to lead, how to win. When his brother Perdiccas III was killed in battle, Philip returned to Macedonia and seized the throne in 359 BCE at just 23 years old. The kingdom was surrounded by enemies, the army was broken, the throne contested. Philip did not panic, he planned. He bribed some enemies, defeated others, and bought time to do what no Macedonian had done before. He built an army, not just any army, but a machine of war forged in discipline and innovation. He introduced the sarissa, a pike twice as long as the Greek spear, and trained his men to fight in tight phalanx formations that could crush traditional hoplite lines. He expanded the cavalry from a few hundred to thousands and turned his soldiers from farmers into professionals. And then he turned outward. He conquered Thrace, Illyria, Thessaly, and most of northern Greece, not just with force, but with diplomacy, marriage, and manipulation. He formed the League of Corinth, uniting the Greek city-states under his leadership, and declared war on Persia, the ancient enemy across the sea. He was not just a warrior, he was a builder, a strategist, a visionary. He transformed Macedonia from a forgotten kingdom into the spearhead of a new empire. And behind him stood his son Alexander, watching, learning, waiting. But before the invasion could begin, before the ships could sail, before the world could change, Philip walked into a theater on the day of his daughter's wedding, and did not walk out. It was late summer in 336 BCE in Aegae, the ancient capital of Macedon, where marble columns caught the light and the scent of wine mixed with the smoke of sacrificial fires. Nobles, diplomats, and generals from across Greece filled the theater, their robes bright, their voices loud, but beneath the laughter lay whispered rivalries and the thrum of ambition, hungry for favor and power. Philip walked among them without his full guard, flanked only by trusted officers. He laughed with old comrades, clasped shoulders, and drank from cups of honeyed wine, a gesture meant to show his confidence and approachability. In the shadows stood Pausanias of Orestis, once Philip's own bodyguard, now a man simmering with resentment after a grave personal insult and humiliating injustice that the king had refused to redress until vengeance burned too hot to ignore. As the music swelled and his daughter's laughter rang through the hall, Pausanias drew his dagger, a slender blade forged for killing, not ceremony. He moved like a shadow, parting the crowd, and plunged the steel into Philip's side. The king staggered forward, blood blooming across his royal purple cloak. A scream rose from the front row, then a cry of horror as the blade tore through flesh. Philip clutched at his wound, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. Around him, bodies froze, tables crashed, guards lunged, but the assassin slipped into the chaos only to fall when his horse stumbled on the marble steps, giving Philip's men the moment they needed to end his flight. Theater candles guttered in the sudden dark as cries of grief and rage collided. Many could not believe the man who had united Greece and stood on the brink of avenging Persian tyranny lay dying at his daughter's wedding, a blade in the hand of one he once trusted. By the time Alexander ascended the throne, the echo of that single stab had already reshaped the world, a kingdom's destiny altered in an instant, and the fires of empire forged in his father's blood began to burn brighter than ever before.